And good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. Welcome as you come in. I'm Roy Potter, and we're going to talk about some things this morning. Today is the 18th of June, 2020, and I can't believe June has gone by so quickly. It's been a flash in the pan almost. Yes, I do have my Second Amendment cup of caramel cream, and it should last. It's probably not going to be very long this morning. I've been doing some other things here. Uh, One of the reasons why I do the live streams is so that we have some interaction on the chat. But there are people that seem to think that that's all I look at is the chat and expect me to answer everybody as they come in. And ladies and gentlemen, I just can't do that. I can't actually, discuss things and get all of your questions, all of your comments, even those that I know real well, like like Edelson James or Morgan Hart with Headlines with a Voice, or any of those mods, even with their uh, bright symbols on the screen, I don't always see them because my screen moves very quickly. And when I look and I see something that I know I want to address, and I come back and I talk to you, I'm going to miss all that other stuff. And all I can say is I apologize. I'm not going to do this like some other YouTubers do, where they sit there and they stare at the chat and answer you that way. It just doesn't work that way for me. And so, those of you who are upset about that, I'm very sorry, but that's just the nature of the way I have to do this. And it's nothing personal. Trust me, it really isn't. It's, if anything, it's my inability to do all the technical stuff and really interact as much as I would like to. The other reason why I leave the chat on rather than disabling it like a lot of people do is because I do see that you all will interact with each other, and I think that's a good thing. You don't have to necessarily just listen to me. You might hear something I say, and you might see somebody on there that you know, and you have a conversation with them, and that's another reason why I do it. You'll notice I try to leave the chat on even after I disconnect from the live stream, before I actually disconnect from YouTube. I'll try to leave it on so that you all can have a little more interaction. So please don't take offense. It's not personal. It's nothing that I have against anybody or I'm trying to ignore anyone. It's just the nature of the beast. Okay? All right. Uh, they seized Portland now. They've set up an autonomous zone in Portland. I think most of you should know that by now. I told you that it would start moving. They actually did go to Olympia. Not much is talking about it. I don't have anybody in Olympia that can actually tell me what's going on, but apparently they did go there, and they're doing some things around the capital area there, which Olympia, of course, is the capital of Washington. So I knew they'd go there eventually. They're still apparently jockeying for position there or whatever, but they have taken Portland, which is just down the road, about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So that's happened. So it's starting to expand out. As I told you last night, they're handing out weapons in Seattle, and for sure they're doing this elsewhere. So this is definitely getting ready to move in the kinetic phase, and in fact, I think it already has. Uh, as I explained last night, a lot of people are wondering why this whole thing is happening in the very cities that supposedly support these people. And as I explained last night, those are beachheads. They took them politically, like Inslee, for instance, or Governor Brown in Oregon, or Governor Newsom in California, or Governor Cuomo in New York, although he's been there quite a while. The point is that they've already made these beachheads. Remember how when Trump came in, we said we had a beachhead in the White House? Well, that's how they look at it too, but they're actually better at it than we are. So they have these beachheads in these different areas. And if you remember D-Day, the beachhead is where the logistics trains start to come in and bring in the supplies and more personnel and et cetera, right? So that's what they did. They went to these different cities. They set up these things, these community organizers did. Obama was one of them in Chicago. Set up these things, and they're based on the Weather Underground's plan from the 1960s and 70s under Bill Ayers. This is all Maoist revolution stuff. It absolutely is. And our government failed us Well, they failed us no matter what their reason for doing it was. Okay? They failed us because they didn't protect us from this. They were more concerned about constitutionalists, people that stood up for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, than they were getting undermined by the Weather Underground. You notice even lately, with all that's going on, what did Ray's FBI call the most significant threat in the United States? White supremacists and constitutionalists. I mean, this is an ongoing game that's been going on for decades. It didn't just start yesterday. And I've been fighting this at one level or another for 3 to 4 decades now. And you notice I haven't really accomplished much. Well, I was taken out of the game very early on, and I think I understand why. It wasn't because of what I did, it was because of what I thought and what I was going to do. So at any rate, these different cities are now what they have is they have a base of operations with the support of the locals. Remember, if you remember the Malheur situation, the Bundys had the situation at the Bundy Ranch. They didn't have the support of the sheriff then, but it wasn't overt. It wasn't overt antagonism. It wasn't overt opposition. But there was overt opposition in Malheur. And I always said, it's not a good idea to try to go and help people where their local government is against them and against what you're going to do, to the point like the Malheur, the people there in Burns, Oregon did, the sheriff, if you remember that whole situation. So when those people were going to Malheur, I said, that's a mistake. First of all, they don't want you. And second of all, you're not going to have any support there. And that's exactly what happened. Okay, so the left already knows this. The scripture again that says, the children of darkness are wiser than the children of light. It's very true. So they've planned all of this out. They've taken over these different cities with these democratic leftist governors who were really Maoists or Bolsheviks, one of the two, probably Maoists basically, Maoist communists. And you can see how they've done things, right? So they consolidate their position, they get their political support, they get their weapons, they get their whatever it is that they're putting together. And I could talk about all that, but I think you get the idea. And then, just like at D-Day, when they took over the beach, then they start moving. Do you get it now? That's what's happening, and that's why I said they'd start on the coast, because that's where most of their support is. And then it's just like the situation with the Electoral College that they want to change. They want those states on the coasts and places like Chicago, Illinois, places with high population density, to basically use those to take over the country. And so that's what's happening here. All right. I hope you understand that that's why they went to Seattle, why they're in Portland, and why they're burning up liberal areas. Okay, that's why. And there's another reason too. It's a spiritual thing, and I'll just mention real quick. It's the wicked will destroy the wicked. And we can apply that to this situation. We can apply it also to what's happening in the White House and in the federal government. It's the same way everywhere, and that's why I've cautioned you not to get decisively engaged in any of this. Okay, that's why I talked about the barroom fight. You know, when the cops come, they don't jump into the barroom fight. They let these people beat each other up for a while. That's what the Chinese are doing. They're causing this, along with Bill Soros and the Rothschilds and Obama, Hillary, all these different people. They're causing these difficulties, fighting amongst each other, right? And then they're sitting back, and as many people have said, they're sitting back drinking their cognac and just waiting for us to beat each other to a pulp. And when they figure that we've beaten the snot out of each other, then they're going to come in. So I hope that explains what's going on and why they went to the very cities that had people that supported them there. Okay, that's the reason. But that's not going to be the end game at all. Okay, you understand that. This is going to move, and it's going to start getting into the more conservative areas. And they're going to be worse than they were in the liberal, which addresses the question that's going on in Atlanta. Okay, Atlanta, Georgia, with this whole situation with this district attorney there filing charges, didn't even notify the Georgia state investigators what he was up to. He just went ahead and filed this. He's done some really odd things. First of all, he called the taser a deadly weapon when officers used it against a suspect. I think he charged 4 officers with that. This was like some time ago. But then he's such a hypocrite, he turns around and he says that the taser isn't a deadly weapon when it's turned on the officer. And I told you I watched that right away. And I'm very critical of the police. If that guy if in fact it was dark, I don't know if the officer really knew it was a taser or not, but even if he didn't, even if he did know it was a taser, if that guy shot them with the taser, he would have access to their service weapons. Do you understand how serious that is? So when a suspect has something that can disable you and make your weapon available, damn right I'm going to shoot his ass. Just the way it is. So I know this officer apparently had some other disciplinary measures, but knowing this district attorney and how nasty he is, which is probably a Soros placement, remember that's what they were doing. Soros was putting money not into the big national elections, but trying to change the DAs around the country so he can influence the local laws, tear down the police, tear down the laws. And again, I'm very critical of the way our system has gone. We have militarized the police way too far. We have told them that use of force is protect yourself at all costs, and I don't go along with that. If you're wearing a badge and a gun, you're supposed to protect the public first. There is some reasonableness in what I just said to make sure that you're capable of protecting yourself so you can protect others, which is what this officer was doing in my estimation. I would not have done anything different. Well, I probably would have. I probably would have approached it a little bit differently, but that doesn't mean that he did the wrong thing. Okay, but we see what they're doing. That area there in Georgia is very conservative, but look how they've forced and I'm sure this wasn't an accident. Because it's a Soros plan to put down the police. That's what the communists do. They first attack the police. So they've gotten all those police to walk off the jobs. And I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do. Frankly, as Rich Higgins has pointed out, the American people are going to have to stand up. But there's a danger in that. The danger, of course, is, as I've always said, if you're not under competent authority, the feds, particularly the FBI, the DOJ, etc., plus those that are sympathetic with the feds and the local governments, are going to come after you and say that you're the terrorist. You're the domestic extremist or domestic terrorist. And that's why I pushed Trump to give us cover under Article 2. Do you understand that? I think you do. So at any rate, this thing is on the move. There have been bombs found. There have been weapons caches located. There's some questions to that as about what the circumstances were. And I don't want to get into it, but I saw it myself here, and I've talked about it. Several months back, I saw a vehicle with 2 illegals in it that had stacks and stacks of ballistic vests. They were getting ready for this last summer. They knew it was coming. Okay, so we're right there. We're right on the cusp of this thing. And I don't want to turn this into a Trump bashing session today. Mark Pantano and others have explained the constitutional requirements for the president and the federal government to get involved in this. But I hasten to add that this is a show. This is theater. And Trump needs excuses not to act so that this can happen. That's my estimate of the situation. Okay? There are other ways he could act without taking the military in. There are other ways. Now I just told you one. Okay, the governors, in order for the feds to step in, it was like in Burns, Oregon. The sheriff there requested the FBI to come in. I'm sure he was encouraged to do that, but that's what happened. And then they came in. There was another aspect of that, of course, and then that was that the Malheur Wildlife Refuge buildings that they took over there are federal property. But there were some other issues about the laws and about how that property was obtained and what it was being used for that became the issue. So I don't want to get into all of that. I just want to point out that this thing really is moving, and that there are things that should be done right now. Soros should not be walking around free. Gates should not be walking around free. Fauci should be off the task force and be under indictment for what he did with China. And that goes along with all these other people too. And that's why I called this China is calling the shots. That is what the reality is. That's why Milley did what he did. That's why Esper did what he did. That's why Obama is doing what he's doing. HRC, on down the line. What was it? Well, I don't want to get too far off in the weeds. We already know that they control most of the entertainment, most of the news agencies, all this stuff. So it was only a matter of time before they started to actually exert their muscle in our most important institutions as far as running, protecting our liberties and our way of life. So it was obvious that they were going to get into the Congress, both the House of Representatives and the Senate, which we've seen it with Feinstein, right? We've seen it with Pelosi, et cetera, Schumer, et cetera. They got into the presidency. They influenced the presidency. That, along with Barack Obama and all that business, using ISIS and all this thing is very convoluted. They're bringing all this stuff in. They're saying, how can they do that? Well, they've had plenty of time. They've had decades to set this up. And as I told you, this was all a plan from the 1800s. And I had somebody contact me the other day, and they said, I want your references on this. You obviously don't know where I read those, okay? So I'm not going to explain how I know. And those that are out in the public, that are available in the public, I went and checked, and they've been changed. The current texts that are available have been changed. Just like China said, remember when they were doing the remake of Red Dawn, they had Chinese involved as the bad guys, and China was able to convince them to make it somebody else. Well, they're doing the same thing with this. This would probably, I don't even know if this is going to go up on YouTube. When they see that I'm saying China's calling the shots, they might stop this one. So you might want to record it. I'm not going to. I mean, mine automatically records, but you might want to record it if you want to send it out, because they might just take this one down, because I am pointing the finger at them. But when you point the finger at the Chinese, you've got three fingers pointing back at yourself, and that's a fact. It's our government, the people in our government, our intelligence community, our people like Fauci, like Comey, like HRC, like Obama, etc., that have pushed the Chinese model for a long time. We know that. Okay, so they are making their move at this point. There's no question. The picture that you see there with Trump and Xi and their wives, I think that's very telling. The storyline was that Trump was trying to get better trade deals for the United States, put China in its place. He had the big show over in Korea. I'm very suspicious of all of that at this point. And there'll be a lot of people that will be very upset at me for saying that. But you look at the end result. You look at the end game, where it's going. There was a thing I put up on Twitter the other day. A lady put up, apparently she was watching television and focused in on Trump, saying a reporter was asking if the only place, or if they needed vaccines and if China had them available, would Trump get them? And he said yes. There was a possibility that as you look at it, yeah, maybe it was dubbed in a way, making him say yes to a question he didn't. But I think it's accurate, because what is he doing? He's pushing forward Operation Warp Speed. And the situation with China, we are still dealing with China. We just heard the other day in Senate testimony, or House testimony, I forget which it was, where the government representative, the trade guy, I forget his name right now, he told the Congress there, he says, we can't break our ties with China from the economic viewpoint. Well, that's exactly opposite to what Trump says. So is there a disconnect between this guy and Trump? Well, the same thing happened when Pompeo was talking about things and seemed to be opposed to Trump, and even Vice President Pence, when he went to Davos, said things that were opposite to what Trump was saying publicly to us. So there's the question. The question is, are they actually fighting against Trump, or is there in fact a theater that makes it look like that Trump is the victim? And that's the take that I'm doing at this point, and I know that infuriates a lot of people, and I don't think Rich Higgins likes it. I know that the retired colonels that I tweet back and forth with probably don't like that. But look at the fruits of what's happened. Is it just because he can't get anything done, or is it because he's complicit? Well, it's got to be one or the other. And when you see what he's pushed, and I don't want to beat a dead horse on this, when you see what he's pushed, I've got to believe it's the latter. Now, Rich Higgins did come out yesterday and he said, now that the swamp has been drained, what are you all going to do? And people were saying, well, Trump hasn't drained the swamp. He hasn't fired anybody. Well, Rich Higgins' point was is he drained the water out so that we could see the creatures that are hiding in the swamp once the water is drained, that you can see them. I like that analogy. I like that. But I also have to understand that there is a power play at the elite level. And as George Carlin said, we're not part of that. we're not a part of that club. So it's hard to understand the workings back and forth, but the bottom line comes down to they don't care about your liberty. They don't care about your lives. They don't care about your future. They don't care about your posterity. As a matter of fact, they want to kill all that and have it all for themselves. I just can't see it any other way. Now, I wanted to also jump to this. Pompeo, they had an unannounced meeting yesterday. I mentioned it last night. The Chinese, I forget what they call this guy, but anyway, he's the diplomat that China said we need to meet with Pompeo right now. And so it was a meeting that the Chinese called. Pompeo went in there, and nobody knows what it's about. Well, and I tweeted this out last night. The spokesperson for the State Department and for Pompeo, Morgan Ortagus, I guess is how you say the name, sent this out, and I want you to listen to what the explanation was for the meeting. Secretary of State Michael R. Pompeo met today with Chinese Communist Party Politburo member Yang Jieqi in Honolulu. I don't know if I said the guy's name right. I don't know Chinese. In Honolulu, Hawaii, to exchange views on U.S.-China relations. The secretary stressed important American interests and the need for fully reciprocal dealings between the two nations across commercial, security, and diplomatic interactions. He also stressed the need for full transparency and information sharing to combat the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and prevent future outbreaks. What's missing? Who called the meeting? What were the Chinese asking or demanding? It's not there. This is a whitewash. This is baloney. This is a template of BS so that they just throw it out there to give you something to gnaw on. It's totally irrelevant what that said. If the Chinese called the meeting, what was it they were calling the meeting about? These things that Morgan Ortagus listed? No. Things are afoot, ladies and gentlemen. Again, the Chinese are upset about Taiwan. They're overflying it. They're upset about Hong Kong. They're upset about, we talked about this some time ago, bless Rich Higgins for pointing it out, the Malacca Strait, which the South China Sea, I hope you can see this, the South China Sea is right here. And if they're going to come over with their ships this way, to get there, they'd have to go all the way, practically all the way around this way here. In other words, they add thousands of miles of the trip. The Malacca Strait is right here between Malaysia, right here, okay, and Sumatra right here. There's this Malacca Strait. They have to keep that. The Chinese are trying to get control of that so that they can control the shipping lanes there. They can close it off to stop us, and then keep it open for themselves. So that's a problem. The Malacca Strait. Bless Rich Higgins for explaining. Well, once I looked at the map, I realized what he was saying because I do map studies. That's for sure. I don't know why I missed that. That was several videos back, actually several months ago now. But at any rate, so they are in fact moving because they see America is weak. The revolution here started. There are disconnects between even the Department of Defense and the president and these people, in my estimation, I mean, let's say that Trump is on the up and up with all of this. Let's just say he is, okay? It doesn't matter because the end result's going to be the same. They're doing the China thing, okay? The revolution is being used to tear the country apart, and nobody's doing anything about it. I still think that because of these foreign actors that are in here, we are permitted to attack FTOs. Okay? The Congress declared, and I'm not saying I like this, but the Congress declared that the U.S. was a battle zone. Did you know that? I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying it abides by the Constitution. But I am saying that they're using our system against us, and something has to be done, or we're going to lose this whole thing. In my situation, I would be a Grant right now. If you understand the Civil War, I would be a Grant right now. I'm not sure I want to go so far as to be a Sherman. I don't like that. But this needs to happen. And the people are doing the right thing. They're standing up in Boise. You saw them armed up there when they said they were going to get these demonstrations. You saw the guy that had to shoot that other dude in Albuquerque, and then the guy that was defending himself gets arrested. And I told you that was going to be the issue. So they've gotten us to the point where we're almost frozen. A lot of people are accusing the Americans of not wanting to act. Well, it's because of the way the government has set things up, so that if you do act, you become the criminal rather than the criminals that are acting on you. That's why I kept saying competent authority under Article 2. That's where we are. So something happened in this meeting with Pompeo. And the big thing that's missing there is why the Chinese called the meeting. There was an ultimatum of some sort. I'm certain that they've said, your country's fallen apart. We're helping the revolution in your country. I wouldn't doubt that they said this. We have sleeper cells that are ready to be activated at a moment's notice. We have biological weapons, we have chemical weapons, we have explosives, we will take out infrastructure, we will have our teams, plus those who are sympathizing with us in ISIS and in the drug cartels, etc., will do mass events. They don't need to drop bombs on us. We're so disconnected in this country now, you can't even get a police... I'm not saying they're wrong. You can't get a police department to help another police department in Atlanta. Again, I understand why. I don't find fault with them, but don't you see that that's how we've been maneuvered into this? The governors won't ask for help to take care of this thing. A lady was on me this morning, or maybe it was last night, but I saw it... Pardon me. Coffee always makes me burp. Where she was saying, well, Trump can't do anything in Atlanta, the Constitution. And again, Mark Pantano's right on that. But look at the other things that are happening. Or what happened in Georgia with Kemp? Do you remember? Yeah, Trump didn't support him. When Kemp wanted to open the nation back up, when he wanted to open his state back up, Trump, again, he was telling everybody they need to open up. And then when Kemp did it, he goes, oh, he shouldn't have done that. He did it too fast. Trump constantly sends mixed signals. And the reason why he does it is because he wants to have plausible deniability so he doesn't have to accept responsibility. That's the absolute mark of his presidency. The absolute. So Kemp hasn't asked for help. And it might be, I'm just kind of thinking through this here. I'm not sure I'm right. But Kemp might be saying, Trump has brought this on us. Let's just let it play out for a while. He'll probably do something about this thing in Atlanta here pretty soon. But I look at Trump and I say he's the reason that this is going on, because he has failed to act. He should have kicked ass when he was in office within the first 3 months, and he didn't. He placated everybody. He placated the intelligence community. He placated the Clintons. He placated the Comey. He placated Rosenstein. Oh, he didn't know these people. He didn't know what they were. He was depending on the judge situation. Oh, well, he depended on the Federal Society to help him on that. Always an excuse. We talked about the problem with judges here the other day. I might as well mention this because it has something to do with the whole deal. General Petraeus, I told you, I said that the Chinese and Russians had been training in the United States for civil disturbance operations. And I said how ludicrous that was, right? First of all, you're giving them access to our areas where they can get information that they wouldn't normally get, but also just the idea of pitting them against American citizens. Kate Hempstead, I don't know who she is, but she sent this to me yesterday on Twitter. The MOVNI program, military assets vitally needed in case of insurrection, was used to sneak in 664,000 operatives that have already been in the USA for years, just waiting to be activated. What did I say about the sleeper cells? It was started by General Petraeus. Does that surprise anybody? And that includes Chinese and Russians. I'll just mention this. Mark Pantano came out and said, buy firearms and ammunition, then buy more. Train to be proficient. The police will not be there to protect you. Government is not on your side. You're responsible for your own safety and that of your family. Things are only going to get worse. Prepare. Ditto, 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 ditto. This is the one I was talking about with Rich Higgins. He tweeted out yesterday. So now that the swamp is drained, in other words, the water's been lowered so that we can clearly see all the creatures in there. Kudos for Trump on doing that. I'm just not sure what his ulterior motive was at this point because of all the other things I've discussed about him. So now that the swamp is drained, how is everybody liking what was hidden below the water? Marxism, corruption, globalism, corporatism, and statism. Remember, you asked to see it. Remember, drain the swamp, drain the swamp. Okay. Now what are you going to do about it? Well, a lot of people would say, get in there and support Trump. He's been doing the job. I'm not comfortable with that. Well, then who am I going to pick? Well, I sent that out last night too. I said, how do you want to die, by hanging or drowning? So what do you need to do? You need to forget about the federal government and start taking care of yourself today, just like Mark Pantano just said. And Colonel Manus, Colonel Schlichter, Colonel Anthony Schaefer, John Cardillo, and I could list a lot of other people. Myself. You can't depend on government. Their game at their level has nothing to do with your safety, security, or liberty. Nothing. Buy firearms and ammunition, then buy more. Train to be proficient in their use. The police will not be there to protect you. Government is not on your side. You are responsible for your own safety and that of your family. Things are only going to get worse. Prepare. And I'm here to give you my synopsis of what I'm seeing, and something happened between China. Well, Rich Higgins said that China declared war on us in April of what was it, 2019? I think that's what he said. So we've actually been in a state of war with China for about 1.5 to 2 years. And now it's getting ready to go kinetic. They have set it up and nobody's ready for it. The feds, particularly the FBI, kneel to the Marxist leftists. You don't think Xi didn't see that? You don't think Xi didn't see when the National Guard and some of these others knelt? Or when Pelosi and Schumer and those people knelt? And then police chiefs, police officers kneeling. Xi's over there saying, we don't need to wait any longer. We've got them now. Let's do this now. And if he doesn't, he's a fool. But I think that's that whole thing with Pompeo yesterday. I think that was the ultimatum. The United States military has a lot of technological advantages over China. But you know what? We gave China a lot of their technological advantages. We did. We have. Clinton's did that. Obama helped. And the big difference is, in a land war, the Chinese army is a hell of a lot better than we are. You see what's going on in India right now. India and China had a border skirmish, which was probably another discussion that they had yesterday, Pompeo and this what was his name? Sorry. Politburo member Yang Yichi, I'm not sure how you say his name. Part of the discussion was probably, we know, and they're probably blaming the U.S. for it. You're trying to pressure us here because of what we're doing in your country. You're trying to press us here. It's not going to work. The Chinese army, during the military games, where the Wuhan was probably released, and probably by U.S. assets. I mean, Fauci admitted as much. People have admitted as such that we gave this virus to the Wuhan lab. But regardless, in these military games, where did the Americans score? Where were they in the list of the nations as far as, the scoring? Near the bottom. They didn't do very well at all. We're a feminized military. And I'm sorry, ladies, but that's just the way it is. We've feminized it and we're cutting our own throats. You know how I say it? I'm an avowed sexist when it comes to putting women in harm's way. I don't go with that at all. For two reasons. One, it's not right. We need to protect them, not because they're helpless, but because they're important. And number two, the unit discipline breaks down, which is also why you can't have homosexuals in there. But who pushed that? Gee, Milley. Milley was saying that. So were some of the other Joint Chiefs of Staff. Why would they do that? They needed personnel? Well, that's true. But if we're not protecting our women and children, what are we there for? What are we in uniform for? Why are we carrying weapons? We've become a feminized, transgender population. And we bow down to it. Now we don't just give in. We give a knee to it, and we even prostrate ourselves like you would before God. The Chinese are moving. They're calling the shots. I'm not going to talk about these situations with Trump that much today. There are people showing him all the things that he promised to do and didn't. Because people keep saying he's the greatest president ever. But the greatest president ever hasn't done what he said he was going to do. People say, oh, yes, he has. No, he hasn't. But I'm going to leave that alone for today. I like this one. This is kind of off topic. Kurt Schlichter put it out there yesterday. And I've told cops that they need to always abide by the Constitution and not follow unlawful orders and not to treat the public as enemy number one. I've been on that for many, many years. And I've been distressed to see where the police have gone. There are some justifications for people protesting police activity. I'm not arguing with that at all. Okay? Burning your neighborhood down and others' neighborhoods and beating up people isn't the way to go about it. Absolutely. But when this whole COVID Wuhan thing came out, as you know, and I've said this, I don't know how many times I'm repeating this, but again, I'm bringing these up because these are places where the Chinese and where the New World Order has split us, has found a weaknesses and exploiting it. That's why I keep talking about it, because the cops fell into it, arresting mothers with their kids on the playground. A message to cops from normal people. This is from Colonel Kurt Schlichter. You had your one mistake. Too many of you went along with the pandemic persecutions. We forgive you. Now you need our support. The left hates you. So remember whose side you are on, especially when they tell you to take our guns. I'm going to read that again to you police officers and military out there who want to just go along to get along and get your paycheck and your pension, who think that every order you get is lawful because either you have immunity or because your boss told you to do it and you consider that to be a constitutional order just because they told you to do it. I'm going to read this one more time. This is from retired Colonel Kurt Schlichter, a message to cops from normal people. You had your one mistake. Too many of you went along with the pandemic persecutions. We forgive you. Now you need our support. The left hates you, so remember whose side you are on, especially when they tell you to take our guns. Ditto, ditto, amen, amen. And he said another thing the other day, and I thought this was pretty good. This was a comment before he made the one I just read to you. Right now, cops got to be all G, screwing with the people who didn't hate us by hassling them for taking their kids to the park sure turned out to be stupid in retrospect. I'm not going to do any more Trump bashing today. I see a lot of people that are starting to wake up to this problem. They still want to support Trump, but they're saying, hey, buddy, you got to get on the stick here. You're not doing anything right. Nothing. We got this thing in Atlanta, and what are you doing? You're on Hannity, whining and crying about John Bolton and what he said. Well, you hired the son of a bitch. Oh, but I didn't know. Well, how come lowly lieutenant colonels knew? How come the public knew? How come the Republican Party even knew? But you did it anyway. I'm not going to bash it anymore on that. I'm done. Rich Higgins understands a lot. I talk about him a lot because he was in the White House. He has a lot of understandings at that level. Most of mine isn't political. Most of mine is military and law enforcement and those kinds of things. History. But he says this, and he mentioned it the other day, and I don't think people understood. He said that the Republican Party was the defeat mechanism to take down America. And everybody's going, what? Let me read this to you. First of all, Molly Hemingway, who is an independent journalist. I forget who she works for, but anyway, I'm not going to be able to read her whole tweet here because it's cut off, but let me give you this background. Not that conservatives haven't spent decades saying progressive policy and cultural achievements would mean catastrophic decline for the country, but it's still a pretty horrific thing to watch it happen as it accelerates. And then she goes on. Now I'm going to read Rich Higgins' response to her. Those who wanted to do something about this whole progressive movement policy, even in the Republican Party, those who wanted to do something about it were labeled conspiracy theorists. Don't you love this guy? It was never the Democrats who shut us down, but the Republicans gave them cover. Trump gave them cover, right? Which is where I place the blame. It was never the Democrats who shut us down. It was the controlled opposition Republicans. And now I'm including Trump in that. Even with all the apparent attacks on him, those are nothing more than esoteric projections attacking us. That's all that is. He's just the. You'd have to understand esoteric substitutions. That's not the right word, but it's kind of like in witchcraft. If you want to put a hex on somebody, you take something of theirs, their hair, a piece of their clothing, something that's attached to them, and that's what you work on to work with the curse. Well, Trump is that for us, the American people. That's what he stood for. Do you understand this esoteric connection? And people are saying, that's lunatic, that's crazy. I'm not saying I believe it, but the people that are doing this believe it. And it obviously is working. So I wouldn't just dismiss it out of hand. I've studied this stuff for a long time. So let me start reading this again. I'm sorry I got off on the controlled opposition Republicans. Let me read it again. Those who wanted to do something about this progressive movement in the country, especially even in the Republican Party, about it were labeled conspiracy theorists. Even by Republicans, they were labeled conspiracy theorists. It was never the Democrats who shut us down. It was the controlled opposition Republicans. The designated defeat mechanism of the globalist Marxist strategy. He's right. It's like people say to me all the time, why don't you say bad things about the Democrats? Why don't you? And I do. But we hired a guy who said he was something, and we don't hold his feet to the fire because he's our guy. So since he's Republican, we don't want to force him to do it. So what's the defeat mechanism for us? Duh. And then I got to bring this up. Remember, Milley made the statement that it was the wrong thing for him to do to go over to St. John's Church and to be part of that political thing because the military is not supposed to be political. And and Esper did the same thing. Well, I've warned about Milley for a long time. I've warned about all those generals. Like I told you, even Amazing Polly said, I heard you say about it, or I didn't know you were talking about this. I wish I'd known sooner. Well, gee, what do I got to do? Spell it out to people? I mean, I appreciate her saying that, I brought this up. I don't mean to slam her for it, but I mean, it's not like I've never talked about it. So I guess most people that get some of this stuff really don't follow me, and I don't expect them to. She does fine work, but anyway. So Milley said these things, and frankly, I was appalled. No, I don't agree with what Trump's doing. I knew, but I also knew that the DOD was flooded with leftist Marxists. And again, that Trump is this figurehead, and that really attacking him is actually trying to destroy our morals. They're trying to demoralize us. That's what that is. It's a psychological war that, nothing you Americans can do will fix anything because you don't have control of any of this. We do. It's a demoralization thing, kind of like, Tokyo Rose telling the American soldiers that they're losing the war. They weren't, but they were told that, and that's what's happening. Trump is that. He's the Christ figure that gets whipped and beaten and crucified to show that we're not going to get what we were trying to obtain. And again, not that he is that. I'm now convinced that he is wittingly going along with this. But anyway, so let me read this, what I said about Milley. As always, an excellent article promoted by Rich Higgins. He talked about an article that was in a blog talking about what Milley did and that he should be removed along with Esper and some others, but they won't. So that's what the basic thing was about. As always, an excellent article promoted by Rich Higgins, not written by him, but promoted. My comment, what should Milley have said? This is what I believe Milley should have said. And I'm expanding on a little bit what I put on Twitter because of the amount of space I had on Twitter, but it would be, we stand for your right to demonstrate, but demonstrating is not when you go out and you burn, pillage, rape, plunder, destroy. The military stands ready to assist any governor upon their request to the president for assistance. That's what he should have said, that whole phrase. Instead, Milley knelt to the subversives and violated the UCMJ. And he did. Rich Higgins also said something about the Republicans, and this includes Mitch McConnell, Ryan, all of those, okay? And I got to read this because it's true. This is why Republicans are the defeat mechanism being used by the leftist Marxists. Republicans were elected over and over again since 2010, with ever-increasing majorities, and even given the House, Senate, and Supreme Court to stop the Marxist drift. Instead, they turned on Make America Great Again. They turned on us and attacked us. What we see today is a direct result of their betrayal. We are not losing. Charlie Kirk said, we are losing our country. And Rich came back and said, we're not losing it. It's being taken away. And the conservatives are the ones making sure nobody does anything about it. Boy, isn't that the truth? Let me go to one more spot here. You know, I like talking about these things on Twitter because a lot of you don't follow me on Twitter, and it really helps to have that. Oh man, no, I'm not going to do any more Trump bashing today. I mean, this guy is a lost cause, absolutely a lost cause. Okay, yeah, I think maybe I'm going to avoid the rest of this for now, because my major concern is where we're going next, and then I'll go to chat as best I can. Okay, all right, grab my coffee here. Okay, I think I've laid out to you this morning that there is an unconventional war, asymmetrical war, that has been prepared over several decades to take down the U.S. We've been divided and conquered, almost conquered, but I think we're more than halfway there. We've put aside our principles. We've defied God. We've allowed our intelligence communities to do horrible things, child trafficking. Again, go watch Contraland from Craig Sawyer. I used to promote Vets for Child Rescue a lot because I felt like they were doing good work. And those of you who have followed me for a long time know that I did that practically every program. And I can't really explain why I stopped. Let me rephrase that. I won't explain why I stopped. But it wasn't that I disagreed with the concept. And it's not that I disagree with the efforts that Craig Sawyer is making there. He's done some fantastic things. And the situation that has occurred in that corridor from Arizona almost to San Diego there, that's where a lot of this child trafficking goes, and he breaks that down. I was on the border. I know exactly what he's talking about. And we've been yelling about this problem for a long time. So that's another issue, and that all goes to why the elites aren't supporting us in our righteous causes, because their causes aren't righteous. So again, child trafficking, wars, drugs, these are all methods to obtain control, and we all know that not even drugs, not even money, but the currency of the elites are these children and women. The very things that we should be protecting. And they've made us so that we have a war between men and women, and we even have a situation where and this is why I talked to this lady here the other day, why we not only encourage but expect women to do what men can do. I'm not saying women can't do what, I'm not saying that men can do what women can do. I mean, they can't have kids, despite what, some stupid Supreme Court justice says. And, there are exceptions in both sexes. Some women are stronger than some men. And some men, aren't as strong as some women. You get my point. But the average situation between men and women is men are the physical specimen of the warrior. The women are supposed to be the nurturers of the families. And we've been destroyed there. And it was all by design. And we fall into it because of all the political correctness and promise of, careers and money and expand your horizons and don't do what God made you to be. Boy, did we fall for the Luciferian diatribe. I hate it when coffee gets cold. That's what I get for talking too much. So here we are. They've broken down our society with the help of our own institutions, including colleges, universities, educational institutions, medical now. The medical thing is making it so that we're separating from each other. We don't have these human contacts, these associations where we can trust people, where we get to know them. And I mean in every walk of life. You go into a store now and people are afraid to get within 2 arms reaches of you. I see fear in people's eyes. Americans have turned into pussies. And we've fallen for all of it. And it's all been designed to destroy us. Killing babies, human trafficking, allowing these wars, stealing the widows' houses because of the tax problems. All these wicked things that we've done were bound to come down on us. And we can repent, but it's going to be a rough climb by and large, especially now. So, what do I expect to happen next? Well, I'm following what Rich Higgins talked about. Maybe I ought to go back to that for a minute. He wrote it out on Twitter, and he's absolutely right. The different phases of this revolution. Oh, and somebody the other day said this isn't a civil war. Stop saying it's a civil war. And they show a picture. I think this is one of my good guys, but he shows a picture of, yeah, it is a good guy. I know exactly who it is. He shows a picture of a SEAL, a Navy SEAL in combat garb, and then he shows the Antifa, and they're, the buttery body, fatty, not in shape, can't do anything, just a big mouth. And basically this person says, stop calling this a civil war. Well, I saw that and I thought, gee, guy, this is just the first stages. This is what they're using to break down. Then they bring in the substitutes. They have, it's again, the logistics thing in Seattle. They have a base now where they can operate from. They can do logistics. They can do training. They can do other things. One of which is replacement. They start bringing in the really bad guys. Right? The sleeper cells. Whatever. So no, it is a civil war. It is turning into that, and it's going to go there. Don't underestimate what's happening here. This is unconventional asymmetric warfare, and he should have known better. He should have known better. But it's just the way it goes. Okay, what am I looking for? I wanted to give those few things about Rich Higgins here again. Let me see if I can find this. Sorry I got to do it this way, but it's just easier. Okay, yeah. This is the one he tweeted out the other day. Pay attention, because this is important, because this is what's happening. This is your timeline. When you see these things occur, you know what the next step is going to be. As Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the revolution, the Civil War proceeds under Chinese direction, and people in our IC and our DOD and these traitors. As Antifa shifts to maneuver warfare, they apply political pressure. We're seeing that. Foment future riots. That certainly fits. Destroy cultural targets via direct action or pressured corporate compliance, pulling down statues, demanding a change in the history, corporations going along and bowing the knee to these people. And we're entering this phase now. Escalate killing. Police and anti-communist public figures. Assassinations. Public killings. Single, group, and mass. Seek international recognition and money. And they're already doing that too. You got to keep those steps in mind, because that's where we're headed. And then Kurt Schlichter at that same time said, the senior military leadership supports the establishment's attempt to silence and oppress you. Understand that. Okay, so that's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. This is moving forward. China has the chips. China has everything. They've got everything in their lap, including support from the institutions in our country that are supposed to protect us. But they've sabotaged and betrayed us. Milley is a perfect example of that, as I've been warning for a long time. Oh no. I hate it when I make something and I don't send it. I guess I better do it now. see what it was. Oh, yeah, okay. All right. I want to just kind of mention a couple of other things here that are really important. When you have a lack of leadership, you have a vacuum, you have a void. And it doesn't always mean that a bad leader can slip in, another bad leader. What it does is the enemy sees that. It's kind of like on the battlefield when you have an officer that doesn't know tactics, and the enemy does. And they watch that officer who doesn't have the leadership capabilities to maneuver on the battlefield correctly, tactically. The enemy sees that and can exploit it. Well, that's what's happening now. Because of these problems in our government with our lack of leadership, our ability to combat the enemy is being degraded. Do you understand that? I'd like to say something else about that, but I can't at this point. What I will say is this. We have to shift to prepare for the failure of our nation. It's going down. As I said, the balkanization will happen. This has been a plan since the mid-1800s. The country will split apart very similarly to the way Yugoslavia did, similarly to the way Russia did, the USSR, I should say, the Soviet Union. That's going to happen here. I'm not certain how fast that will happen, but if somebody doesn't get a handle on this Maoist revolution that's bringing about civil war in our country, it'll happen a lot faster. So you need to start making preparations on what to do for yourself after this country fails. And you have to be able to hopefully find some leaders. I'm hoping some state governors will stand up and be rallying points, sort of like the governor in South Dakota. I'm not certain that she's willing to go this far yet, but they need to stand up and be rallying, gathering points for people who don't want to take part in all of this, but will defend liberty and justice. But I'm not certain that we're going to have a governor that will do that in any place, even as good as she is. Forget Texas. Abbott's taken Texas down the wrong road. That was, we were hoping that would be one, but it's abrogated to the left, as most every place else has in one way or another. So you have to start preparing for the ultimate failure of first the United States federal central government, which is there now. They're fighting amongst each other. I told you that. I've been telling you there's a war in the federal government now for 10 years. So make your preparations, and hopefully we have some people that can step into the vacuum here and pull some things together. Because it's going to get bad. It will be nation against nation, and in the Hebrew that means race against race. Race war. Again, they're following the playbook. The good people follow the Bible for their lives as a playbook, but the evil side is in there as well, and they're following theirs. They've split up families, destroyed the man-woman relationship. In other words, son shall rise up against father, daughter against mother. It's interesting, the scriptures don't say wife against husband, because that's a taboo you just don't go to. And I can't explain that to you right now, and I won't. But it doesn't mention it. But obviously that has happened. But the Bible in its Hebrew side is very careful to protect the feminine, and so it won't say that. But that is what's happening, just like it did in the Garden of Eden. Lucifer attacked Eve first and tried to break up that relationship with Adam, and that's exactly what they've done. But the scriptures won't give that a whole lot of audience, and there's a very good reason for it. Okay, I'm just going to look at. We've been going for an hour and 5 minutes. I hope what I've done here. I try to package it all. The bottom line is the meeting with Pompeo yesterday. Recapping the meeting with Pompeo yesterday with the Chinese Politburo member was called by the Chinese, not by Pompeo. We only got the State Department side of what they talked about. They didn't mention why the Chinese called the meeting, and I've told you all about that. That they've apparently given an ultimatum that they are prepared to move forward against the United States. That would be my guess. And of course, the elites want that. That's exactly what they want anyway. So we don't have anybody. Oh, they'll want a war. Wars are always great for them because, of course, they make money. They get rid of some people. They look like they're command and politically strong and all that. It's all a game, just like General Smedley Butler said, that war is a racket. Okay, so don't think that just because we're going to fight against the Chinese that we've got great people in our government protecting us. No, this is all part of the takedown, and we're at a disadvantage right now. They're tearing our country apart, and we're going along with it. So the overall thing here is that China's calling the shots, and that the revolution, the color revolution, the insurrection that is occurring right now is going to gain momentum and is going to go into a very, very bad phase. And it will eventually tear the country apart to where there's no central government left, and you need to prepare for that. Okay? All right. Be nice not to have to pay. You'll think, well, I won't have to pay income taxes anymore. Well, you won't be making any money to pay taxes on anyway. They're going to control everything about you. That's the bottom line, to install the Chinese model. And Trump's helping it along. He's pushing Operation Warp Speed to vaccinate you with the nanotech to keep track of you and do your digital currency. He's pushing it, people. That's why I say I think this is just a game to keep you disarmed, but I won't go there today. I've done enough of that. Okay. Yeah, Genesis 3. That's interesting. One saved sheep. You know about Genesis 3 where they have to tell us their plan. You must study Hebrew. Very good for say one saved sheep. Not many people know what Genesis 3 is really about. Very good, very good. I'm very impressed. Okay. Yeah, no man will save us. I don't want you to have some pie in the sky, ethereal, rapture concept. That's not the way it's going to work. Okay, that's not how it's going to work. You have got to take charge and do everything you can, and then ask God to help you. We don't need kings anymore. We don't need presidents, governments. We can use governments, but it was supposed to be with no king. Okay, and we've got to get back to that, and that's why I say I'm hoping that there's going to be some governor that'll stand up and give us a place to go to. Because we need it. Somebody's got to stand up and do that. By the way, I know some people in the governments in Wyoming and Utah, and I'm going to be talking to them. I don't expect that I'm going to be given much credence for what I say, but I'm going to tell them what they need to do. Okay? I'm planning on doing that in the next few days. Okay. Mrs. Cat, can you give us an estimate on how much time we have? Well, it's like I said, it's accelerated already. We've worked ourselves into a place where we're failing to act. We have no leadership that's acting anywhere. Trump should be on the phone to these governors in the states where he has some influence, like Georgia Governor Kemp, and saying, and I'm not saying he isn't, I just don't see any evidence of it. You got to ask me for some help, and I'll send them. I'll send your help. Send you help right now. And the other side of that is what I said the other day. Don't wait for this thing to hit your states. Don't wait until an incident occurs in your state or county or city. You've got to tell your governor to get his National Guard up and at least give all of their people a warning order to be ready to be called in on a moment's notice, because this is going to move fast when it starts going. Not that they can't mobilize fast enough, but there's nothing wrong with being ahead of the curve. So that's why I said the other day, get your National Guard out there, get them ready now. If they don't know how to do civil disturbance operations, you better get training them. If they don't know how to do counterterrorism, they better get trained. Now, you can't wait any longer. You've got to do this now. You can't just say, well, we don't have the money. Well, you're not going to have anything if you don't do this right now. And the sheriffs need to start deputizing citizens and bringing them into the posse and giving them political, competent authority cover to do this. Or otherwise, the freaking ass feds are going to come down and arrest people for domestic terrorism, for fighting the actual terrorists that they're supporting. That's how serious we are. This has torn the government. It's torn our country apart. So how long have we got? Don't wait. It's happening now. Okay, that's all I can say. Yeah, China, yeah, that's right. UN peacekeepers. Yeah, I know. Ahal, you say the National Guard aren't allowed to have weapons to protect themselves. That's not true. That was a decision made by Esper in D.C. It happened also during the '68 riots. They weren't given ammunition. There's no sense in carrying a weapon without ammunition, but they are allowed to do that. But it's the leadership again that restricts that. Oh, we can't have an accidental shooting, Well, I agree, but that's what training's about. Unit discipline, etc., etc. Yeah, police are Zuwaya. The police are leaving their posts. The time is now. That's right. As soon as the police get dispersed, like they're doing now, and I'm not disagreeing with them doing that. I understand why, but that's when these other forces come into the vacuum and seize control. It's happening now. Right? Exactly. Okay. I don't want to take your time anymore. There's plenty more to do. Thanks for coming this morning. My coffee's cold, and of course that's how I know that it's time to let you be. I hope that I cleared a few questions up for you this morning. And again, as you can tell, I can't grab everybody on here and answer their questions. It's just not possible. I mean, I don't know how many chats come in. How many have we got here? Is there a list? I think it gives a number, but there are hundreds, and there's no way I can address everyone. And even people that I know, I can't always see you. It doesn't stand out to me. So it's not a thing. It's not a personal thing. It's not, I'm not trying to avoid you. It's just the way it is. Okay, it's just the nature of the beast. Okay, keep your eyes on the rise and your ears to the ground. Be ready. I told you last night, you better have your arms ready. Get armed. Be armed now. I don't care where you live. Even if you're not in a hot spot area, you need to be ready to defend yourselves. Talk to your neighbors. Find out, if things get really nasty in your area. Figure out a defensive strategy where you're not going to get caught in your home and burned out or shot to hell. I'm sorry, but brick and mortar, and brick is not too bad, but certainly siding and drywall and sheathing doesn't stop a bullet. Don't believe that crap you see in Hollywood. Hiding behind a wall doesn't protect you at all. That's no cover at all. Okay? That's concealment. There's a difference between cover and concealment. But there are ways around that. So you got to be ready now. You can't wait any longer. Learn to shoot that weapon that you have. If you haven't taken it out and learn how to use it, if you can take a course on tactical defensive training, do it. But time is getting short. Okay? All right. Again, eyes on the rise and ears to the ground. Get armed. Get prepared. Food, water, your medical supplies, whatever it is you need, you got to have it now. Okay. I think I covered everything I intended to. I guess we'll see you later. Again, I don't know when I'll be up again, but hopefully the whole thing doesn't go down in the next few days. All right, out here.